The chief communication officers all around the world are part of an elite group, and it's a membership-driven organization. I would assume it's very invite-only, and it's called the International Page Society. We have with us the Vice President of the International Page Society, Mr. Peter Debreceny. He's going to be talking to us about the role of the Chief Communication Officer, and he's also going to give us insights into the 2019 Page Research Report. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Debreceny.
Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation to be here. I wanted to come to this conference for a long time, so it's really great to be able to be here. First time at PRAXIS and first time in Goa, but many good friends in the hall, so I appreciate it. And I'm going to try and quickly take you through, as was mentioned, the most recent research, a little bit about Page, what we try and do, some of our beliefs, and then give you a quick run through about the most recent research that we've done. It's been an 18-month, 20-month long program that's taken us around the world, including here to India, as you'll see. And that was released at our annual conference in Boston just 2 weeks ago. So went to members first 2 weeks ago and now here in India. So a little bit about Page. As was mentioned, we're an organization that is 35 years old and is comprised of about 1,200 members in total, 800 inside the original organization Page. The members of Page are the heads of communications for major global organizations, companies, NGOs, government organizations, including here in India, agency CEOs, and key academics around the world. So about 20 countries represented in Page, and then in our sister organization, Page Up, folks who report to Page members, about 300 members there across 15 countries, including here in India. So why have an organization like Page? Well, we believe that the enterprise leadership role of the Chief Communications Officer is incredibly important. More about that in a second. So our mission is to support that function and support our members in those roles. And we have a purpose. I know we'll talk more about this in a second too, and we've had it in the conversations over the last couple of days. Social purpose is really important. We've, a couple of years ago, tried to think through what's our real purpose, and we believe it's to unite the world's best communicators to transform business for the better, not just our own organizations, but business as a whole. And we believe that the role that we play as communicators, the heads of the teams and everybody in the team and the agencies who advise our organizations, is important and essential to the success of business around the world. So strong leadership from the CCO and her team is really important. It's a vital part of driving a business outcome, particularly at a time when there are new expectations of business and businesses are going through transformation and reinvention as we speak. And so that requires us as communicators to drive leadership across the organization, not just within our own teams, but working with every other part of the organization as a whole. There are, if you go onto the Page website, you'll see there are some principles that we believe in that are codified 35 years ago when the organization started, and we believe are equally valid and authentic today. And then what do we do? So, like any organization, we have great conferences like this. One of the, not nearly as large as this, I think this is the largest collection of conference of communication professionals in the world, so congratulations everyone. I wish ours were as big as this. More. You all are the heroes, right? We have a series of regional events around the world, including we had one in Delhi earlier in the week and one in Mumbai on Thursday. We have a whole range of activities, as you'll see, that members can participate in to share best practices and learn from each other. And then increasingly over the last 15 years, we've moved from being a place where folks can network to become a truly learning organization, and thought leadership has become really important for us. So what has happened is people have said, the world is changing, the communications landscape is changing, help us understand what's going on and what should we do about it. So there's been a range of activities around thought leadership, and we're going to explore in a minute the most recent of these, which as I mentioned, brand new, 50-page report on the CCO as pace setter. And it's not just a report. In the past, we've done reports, we've put them out there, they've described what's going on, and our members have said, help us take what's going on and work out what to do about it. So, as you'll see with this report, we've tried to work out what's going on in the world and a time of great existential change. And importantly then, what can communication teams do in a very practical sense in response to that? So how do we get to the conclusions in the report? It's a pretty extensive process. Started beginning of last year when John Highwater, former CCO, CMO, Chief Brand Officer for IBM and a longtime Page member, reported on a conversation he had had with over 100 CEOs around the world, and that everybody was facing massive disruption. So if our CEOs are facing massive disruption, our CCOs are as well. And so we started on this journey. We've talked to over 200 communication heads across 25 industries, 28 cities, 15 countries, here in India, in Mumbai, and Bangalore, and Delhi. And in addition to that, we've done a major quantitative survey, same countries here, helped by our country chair in India, Madan Bahal from Ad Factors, helped distribute the survey here. And I have to give a shout out to Madan. He's been a Page member for a while now and has been a fabulous partner for us in expanding the role of Page inside India in his role as country chair. So a little bit of context. As I mentioned, John came to us and said, this is the conversation that I've had with CEOs, and the companies represented in these conversations were over $2 trillion of revenue. Again, all the major companies, IBM, customers from around the world. First one was, there's a new business model being created, irrespective of the country, the age of the organization, or the industry that they're in. As everybody is becoming a technology company, a data-driven company, and at the same time, new organizations, new startups are disrupting existing businesses everywhere. So every CEO was facing the pressure of, how do I react to the changing business environment that I'm working with, and how do I do it quickly enough? Second, and we've had a lot of conversation about this over the last couple of days, there's a new demand on businesses to create more than just shareholder value. So how do we create long-term societal value? What's our social purpose? How do we react to demands from stakeholder groups that we haven't had to worry about before inside our business? So now it's not just the employees who are saying, you have to be interested in social issues that are concerning us as employees, and it's not just communities who are saying, what's the good and the contribution you're making to the community? Now it's the investor who's saying, you have to be able to demonstrate the value that you're delivering to society. So on the left here, Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock, the largest hedge fund in the world, 2 years ago, was very adamant in his discussion with the portfolio companies, you have to be clear about what you're delivering, otherwise we're not going to invest in you. Same approach is being taken many other financial institutions, including the Japan Pension Fund, government pension fund, the largest pension fund in the world. Third, and we just had a great example of this in the previous speaker, that personal data, the ability to manipulate it, the technology, the power of technology enables deep personalization, but also fake news and the weaponization of information. So we can get now, and you'll see in a minute how we have tried to apply this to the work that we do, from mass market segments to one-to-one relationships with stakeholder groups around the world. At the same time, the fake news that we just saw, including deep fakes now with audio and video, where what we see, what we hear is actually completely fabricated. And then the CEO agenda, as we heard yesterday, the average life of a CEO is a little over 4 years. If you need to completely rechange your organization, and you need to do it inside 4 years, and typically that's a process that takes a lot longer than that, then who do I turn to for help? Our argument is you turn to the Chief Communications Officer. Typically, though, that's not happening nearly as much as it should, and CEOs are creating new titles and new roles in the hope that they'll find somebody that can help them make that transformation journey in the incredibly fast time frame that they have in front of them. So that's the context, that's who we talked to over the last 18, 20 months, and what have we found? Firstly, there are 4 dimensions of the new CCO. Got too close there. Corporate brand, corporate culture, societal value, and what we're calling ComTech. And these align well with one of our previous thought leadership reports from 2012, where we had postulated a new model of corporate communications, which at the center has corporate character. Who, and what do we mean by that? The mission, the vision, the values, the purpose, the business strategy of the organization, all aligned, activated, and defined across the organization. And when we think about our findings for this particular report, we see brand, culture, and social value as making up the corporate character that we talked about before. And then once you have that truly activated and delivered by all parts of the organization, we postulated back then that you can get to corporate advocacy. So somebody experiences the organization, has a positive relationship, and begins to talk about it now, particularly through social media. And that's, we believe, the underpinning of the other 3 things. So I'm going to start with ComTech. What do we mean by ComTech? To use data and digital tools to target and nurture a relationship at an individual level with all stakeholder groups. We also think that this can provide a defense against the disinformation and deep fakes that we've been chatting about over the last little while. Where do we start with this? So John had a CMO hat on as well. As a CMO, he had access to a whole range of technology tools that help drive the marketing process. And now this is pretty well defined inside marketing. There's way more actual programs and technology tools than you can use, but everybody inside marketing now, it's pretty well defined. There's a role, there are titles, there are job descriptions. You can move from one marketing organization to another. And using MarTech, what they call MarTech, you can go from awareness through an action, a purchase, the building of a relationship, retention, and then advocacy. So our belief is that we can take the same sorts of tools, apply them to what we do inside communications, and drive our relationships with stakeholders, again, at an individual level. So how do we do this? For each of these 4 areas that I'm talking about in the findings, we've tried to lay out, okay, that's a great idea, now what do you actually do? So we've looked at each of these, we've tried to define, here are things that you can do when you start, here are things you can build on at the next level, and then when you get to the as far as that you can go right now, this is what being a pace setter looks like. I'm not going to go through the individual details, but I'm going to show you where you can find them shortly for later on. So in this instance, most of the folks that we talk to, the respondents to the survey, are way down at the left-hand end. We have digital content teams, we're sending material out through channels, we're monitoring a little bit what's happening with them, but very few people are down at the right-hand end where they're having a one-to-one conversation personalized at an individual level. So that's where the big opportunity lies. Okay, so underpinning these next three things, brand, culture, social value, is the ability to use Comtech to drive the relationship and the communication process, right? So next, corporate brand. What do we mean by corporate brand? So typically when somebody uses the word brand, we think of it in a marketing sense. That's not how we're thinking about it when we talk about corporate brand. We're thinking about how's the experience between the organization and a stakeholder, and how is that consistent across all stakeholder groups? Increasingly, surprise to us when we did this research, CCOs are being given formal accountability for corporate brand, including here in India. We had great conversations with the folks at Mahindra. We didn't really expect this, but it's happening a lot. And when we think about corporate brand, how does that work? So a lot of us are doing pretty consistent, what's the visual standard look like, what's the narrative, what's the logo, that's pretty standard, right? But right down on the right-hand side here at PaceSetter, it's how do you take the corporate brand experience with the stakeholder group and help drive a business outcome. And you can see that these begin to meld together, brand, and culture and social purpose, which we'll do next, make up the whole of corporate character. When we asked folks, 36% are down at the first level, most folks in the middle, and 20% at the pace setter level. But interestingly, 60% of the CCOs who responded to our survey have that formal accountability for corporate brand. And marketing have been given the accountability, you just worry about the customer, CCO is going to worry about everybody else. Then culture. So if a CEO needs to turn around the company inside a very quick period of time, completely change the way it behaves, the most important way to do that is to change the culture. And as Mary Barra, CEO of GM, says, you can talk about culture change, but actually it's behavior change, and it's behavior change to drive the execution of the business strategy. Here, right on our left-hand end, a professional, many of us are doing internal communications programs, rewards and recognition. That's sort of like the basic supporting culture, but often HR at that point has the formal accountability for culture rather than communications. Then when you move to the far end, now you're using culture to systematically change how the organization behaves and turn it from what it was before to what it needs to be now in order to achieve the business outcome. Where are our respondents on that? Mostly in the middle, so making good progress, but not yet at the point that they're at pace setter level. And increasingly, we find internal communications used to be the stepchild of our profession. Now it's really taken off around the world as being the most important part of a communications team, but particularly because of the need to change culture really quickly in conjunction with other folks, of course, across the C-suite. if on the left-hand side, we asked folks, as your culture changes, what are the most important attributes that you want to see? And unsurprisingly, agility was number one, something that we need, I think, to make sure our communication teams have as well. Particularly like if you go to China and see how quickly those teams work there, we need to, I don't know, from a US point of view anyway, we certainly need to catch up. Okay, and then societal value. So, as I mentioned, social purpose has become the new buzzword, but in a real way, as we just heard in the previous presentation. So, how are people creating social purpose? For example, Philips trying to, on the one hand, incorporating ESG and sustainability policies to help drive business outcomes. So Philips, for example, is completely reinventing its supply chain, manufacturing and distribution system in a pursuit of a circular economy. When a Philips product is finished, whether it's a home appliance or an MRI machine, they're going to take it back, recycle, reuse, and so with the aim being zero waste. And then, as we've heard a lot of over the last couple of days, the increasing requirement for brands to take stands. And a great example is the work that Sujit did for Godrej when they took a stand on an issue that might have been controversial on LGBTQ. So where are we on the progression path around societal value? Actually not doing too badly, right? So professional and Pathfinder evenly split, 20% still down at pacesetter level. Europe is a little further ahead than other parts of the world, I think largely because of the commitment inside Europe for the UN sustainability goals. Interestingly, on brands taking stands, the response we get from Asia is much more positive than from the rest of the world. So those are the four dimensions. Comtech to drive communication to all stakeholder groups around corporate brand, around making the culture change inside the organization, and creating societal value. And that was a very quick run across the top. Where to find more information? So on the page website, there's I put a link in here. I'm happy to share this presentation, but more importantly, go here, paths.page.org. So on this website that we've created, not only can you download the research papers that we've produced, including the most recent one, but there's the description of the various paths, progression paths for each of the four areas, and the ability to take a self-assessment to see where are you, where's your organization, where's your team, where are your clients on each of these, and where might you want to go to from here. So that's me. Thank you very much. I'm going to be just in time. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Peter. Appreciate it.